Hey everyone, Mitch coming in from the Command Core studio. Welcome to the show. So, Aetherdrift spoiler season rolls on. No, I already used that. Speeds up? Yeah, there we go. All right. Even more cards overnight. Some more exciting spoilers. Let's jump into them. And first up, we've got Demonic Junker. Some really cool art on this one, and also a really cool card itself that for certain types of decks out there, I'm looking at you, Alec, with eggs, might be considering it. For a 4/3 vehicle for 7 mana. This isn't just for eggs decks, I should say. Affinity for artifacts. Yeah, the most popular deck type out there. When you see those words, you're like, taking notes. Let's see. When this vehicle enters, for each player destroyed to one target creature that player controls. If a creature you control was destroyed this way, put 2 counters on this vehicle, and it's got crew 2. So this is a very solid card when it comes to artifact strategies, because typically, again, when you have an artifact strategy or even like a treasure token based strategy, which I think is the second or third most popular strategy out there right now. Yeah, Prosper decks, I'm looking out for this too. Again, when you are like, oh, okay, it's got affinity for artifacts, it costs 7. You are never paying anywhere near that. At the most, you're probably paying like 3. You're probably just paying 1 a good amount of the time for this. In a 1 mana, oh, let's just destroy, again, for each player, destroy up to 1 target creature that player controls. So again, it lets you, not destroy your own thing if you don't want to. If you do want to, great, you can get 2 counters on this. That being said, it is basically like the upside of it is a 1 mana, remove 3 things from your opponent's card, which is fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. And also has the upside of, again, if you maybe have like a death trigger on something like a Sad Robot, Solemn Simulacrum, being able to just like take that out, draw your card, and then get 2 counters on this. Yeah, that's quite nice. Like, is it the biggest vehicle out there? No, if it is a 4/3, but like 6/5 crew 2, if you got those counters on it, that's huge. So obviously, when it comes to the type of strategies that might want to utilize this, vehicle decks, obviously, artifact decks, treasure decks, any kind of like an artifact token generator deck essentially can just consider it. And also ETB decks that have a decent amount of artifacts in them too, because again, keep in mind it is an ETB, and that is a very good removal spell for an ETB essentially. Think about like Illuminate Primordial essentially in that vein, where it's like ETB, get rid of 3 things, but they gain life. This doesn't even gain life, it just destroys the things. That's a very good ETB to use and abuse again and again and again and again. And yeah, it's quite good. Moving on. Aether Syphon. Now, one that I was hoping would be better than it is kind of. It's not bad. Let's start with that. It's just a bit disappointing for what it does, what we were teased with it, and then what it is. An artifact for 3 mana in blue. Start your engines. So again, we will see again how much support that really has and like how easy that is to get to, but like it's gonna take a couple turns to get max speed, and you need max speed for this to be good, really. Pay 2 tap, draw a card. Not the worst thing in the world, obviously. I guess that's kind of something with it, right? Like, it's not these days, like 2 mana to tap, draw a card is like, it's much cheaper than it used to be. It used to be like, oh my gosh, you paid 3 for, I can't, was it Jade Tome or whatever the one was, basically, but yeah. Now it's cheaper, but still, like, overall, if you pay 5 mana to draw a card, good for you. That being said, max speed, whenever you draw a card, each opponent mills 2 cards. Now, that is something that we got that teaser text essentially from Morrow. It was like, oh, we're getting another one of those. Great. The restriction on this really kind of dampers it, especially with the context of the card, because the context of what this card would be good in, obviously, is, well, mill decks, obviously. And if you have a mill deck, typically, combat isn't your forte, usually. Or just opponent's life lost. That's usually not how you're trying to win the game. So, yeah, trying to get to max speed with one of those types of decks might be a bit more difficult, because this doesn't give you any opportunities to actually, get the damage on your opponents, have them lose life. There's nothing on this that does this. If it had, like, when you draw your 3rd card in a turn, each opponent loses 1 life, then sure, that could get you there, obviously, but it doesn't do that. So, there is kind of like this give and take, push and pull, but in a weird way of this card, where it's like, it doesn't line up to me with like what the card wants to do. We already have like the effect of like, hey, draw a card, everyone else mills 2 cards. We've seen that effect before on, I believe, a 3 mana enchantment essentially. And that one doesn't like require you to jump through a lot of hoops to get to. So I'm sorry if I'm not too happy with this card, but I just feel like a bit disappointed for mill decks. And maybe I could be wrong. Mill decks out there could utilize this card still, but yeah, let me know, mill players out there, because like I think it's going to be hard-pressed to, like, try to get this in your deck and be like, oh, okay, if I draw it early, maybe in a couple of turns, I could get this to a point where, like, oh, okay, now I'm ready to actually mill players out by drawing a ton of cards. But, like, if you draw it later in the game, it's like, okay, I play this, and it's turn 10. All right, I'm going to get to max speed maybe in 4 more turns if the game is still going on. So, yeah, I don't think it's worth it for a lot of decks out there. Moving on. We've got Beast Rider Vanguard, a 2/2 Human Knight for 2 mana in green. Pay 5. Look at the top 3 cards of your library. You may reveal a permanent card from one that put in your hand. Rest of them on your library, random order. Sorry, random. Any order. Oh, wow, Wizards. Any order. Oh, wow. You're getting adventurous these days. Yeah, I mean, this is probably just draft chaff. Yeah, I mean, if you have, like, an activated ability kind of deck where you can, like, use and abuse that activation, it's not bad, like, you know, when it comes to card advantage, but, like, the amount of mana you have to spend for it is not great. So there you go. Next up. Bright Field Glider, a 1/1 possum mount that somehow doesn't have flying. Here we go. Vigilance for a single white mana. Whenever this creature attacks while saddled, there you go. It gets +1/+2 and gains flying until end of turn, saddle 3. Okay, Wizards, explain to me why, when someone gets on this possum mount, that it gains flying. Does it just, like, gain, like, the, I don't know, bravery to jump off a cliff and, like, float, I guess, essentially? Is that why? Why does having a human on its back give it flying? Anyways, regardless, yeah, I mean, this is 1/1 vigilant creature that has a high saddle cost. I would assume this is not going to see a lot of play, unfortunately. If it was initially, I was like, oh, 1/1 flyer. Wait, no, it's not a flyer unless you saddle it. Okay, probably not. Moving on! Canyon Vaulter, a 3/1 core pilot for 2 mana in white. When this creature saddles a mount or cruise a vehicle during your main phase, that mount or vehicle gains flying until end of turn. Does anyone else find it weird that, like, the pilot tokens get an extra 2, you know, power basically when it comes to, like, saddling or saddling, mounting or, you know, vehicling or crewing or whatever the words are, but, like, the actual pilot creatures themselves don't have that? I don't know. Yeah, I mean, if you've got a vehicle or mount travel deck, great, because this could be pretty good for that. Low to ground, you know, creature that has a good amount of damage potential early, and then also can crew a good amount of vehicles and mounts to give them flying. Moving on. Carrion Cruiser, a 3/2 vehicle for 3 mana in black. When this vehicle enters, mill 2 cards, then return a creature or vehicle card from your graveyard to your hand. Crew 1. I mean, specific self-mill decks, yeah. Other than that, you know, like, it's a vehicle, so vehicle decks can consider it too. Moving on, though, we've got Curse Cloth Wrappings. Here we go. Artifact for 4 mana in total. In black, zombies you control get ++1. It's going to see play already. Tap target creature card in your graveyard gains Embalm until end of turn. The Embalm cost is equal to its mana cost. If you're like me and you're like, okay, it's Embalm, or is it the other one? Like, there's 2 different ones that are basically the exact same thing, but not the same thing. So luckily they have the actual, like, reminder text on this. Exile that card and pay its Embalm cost. Eternalize the other one. Create a token that's a copy of it, except it's a white zombie to other types and has no mana cost. Embalm owns a sorcery, so this is that one apparently. But yeah, being able to, again, throw this in a zombie deck, again, a nice anthem that is harder to deal with than, like, other zombie anthems for the most part, when most zombie anthems are on creatures, which are easier to deal with. It being an artifact, which is a, you know, more sturdy essentially than a just creature in general. It avoids, like, regular wrath effects. So that's already going to be like a, you know, a point to utilize it. But also, of course, yeah, being able to just bring creatures out of your graveyard by repaying them. I mean, obviously, like, they are just... If you got other reanimation effects, like, yeah, this could, like, stop you from getting them back in other ways, obviously, because it's making a token copy of it, but still, it can be a very good way to, again, utilize creatures a second time and also pump zombies. Yeah, it's going to see play in Zombie Tribal. Moving on, End Rider Catalyzer, a 3/1 human warrior for 2 mana in red. Start your engines. Max speed, tap for 2 mana. Yeah, again, like, if you have a start your engines type strategy, again, that new Samut, you know, commander deck, essentially, is probably going to be looking for a lot of low-to-the-ground creatures that can start your engines, or any kind of card, I guess, that can start your engines that are low to the ground. That is definitely a potential for it, but, like, when it comes to, like, oh, this is a mana dork in red, not quite, because, like, again, it's going to take you quite some time to get there and then actually be able to utilize it at max speed, so do keep that in mind. Moving on. Glory Heath Lynx, a 2/3 cat mount for 2 mana in white lifelink. When this creature attacks while saddled, draw for a basic plains card, reveal, open your hand, then shuffle. Saddle 2. I mean, yeah, cat tribal maybe, potentially. Like, there's a lot of cards, you know, looking to get into cat tribal, but it is a card that, again, is low to the ground, can gain you some life, and also, like, if you are saddling it up, you can start gaining some planes. it does create the commitment of Sal 2 is not too big. Like 3 is a decent amount. 1 is obviously like basically nothing. 2 is like, okay, I'm actually committing to this. Yeah, it's okay. It probably won't make the cut in cat decks. Next up, we got Interface Ace. Sorry, I'm not sure why this one's so blurry, but that's just the image that was on the spoiler site. 0/4 robot pilot for 2 mana in white. This creature settles, mounts, and crews vehicles using its toughness rather than its power. Whenever this creature comes tapped during your turn, untap. The spell triggers only once each turn. Interesting. I mean, basically, it's just like a free crew cost for 2 things. This creature can somehow pilot multiple vehicles. So, don't know how it's doing that, but it is doing that. So, yeah, I mean, this can crew things very well. If you are in a, mount or vehicle deck or a combination of both, consider it. Absolutely. Moving on. Nesting Bot, a 1/1 robot for a single white mana. Start your engines. When this creature dies, create a 1/1 color servo artifact creature token. Max speed of this creature gets +1/0. Yeah, I mean, this one's already going to see play because it is just at another version of Doom Traveler. So if you have a Doom Traveler, in your deck, consider this one as well. It's like an aristocrat style staple, essentially, where it's like, oh, okay, cool. I've got, well, again, a creature that when it dies, I get another creature. So it's the exact same thing. You don't really care if they're big or small or whatnot. Again, Taste of X don't care. They're just like, okay, cool. I get 2 creatures when it dies. Great. The fact that it gets +1/0 at max speed, don't really care all that much. But again, what does matter is, again, for like Samut and decks like that, yeah, you're going to consider this because on turn 1, you can start your engines to get things going. And of course, this being a low-to-the-ground creature, start getting that damage in as well on opponents to get that loss of life to get to the max speed. So obviously, again, max speed type strategy decks, if that's going to be a thing, again, with like Samut and maybe another commander at some point, potentially, great. If not, it's already going to see a good amount of play, though, because of Risk Cat style strategies. It's great creature fodder, so definitely keep that in mind. Yeah, a very solid card because of that. And again, like, it looks like it's floating, so why does it have flying wizards? I'm so confused on that. Next up, Perilous Snare. Oh, loot. No, everyone's so upset that you're in a cage. Artifact 4/3. I'm joking, but not joking. Start your engines. When this artifact enters, exile target non-land permanent and opponent controls in this artifact leaves the battlefield. Max speed. Tap, put a counter on target creature vehicle control. Active owns a sorcery. I mean, okay, again, for Start Your Engines decks, max speed decks, yes, it'd be good to just have another low to the ground-ish. Again, any kind of card that you can get in those kinds of decks is probably good because you want to be able to get to the max speed as soon as you can. That being said, like, getting rid of something temporarily is nice. It is, again, like, what is it, Oblivion Ring, kind of, essentially, but again, like, without the flexibility of being able to actually exile one of your own things, which I disagree with Wizards, like, give us the flexibility. Let Johnny's Johnny. Come on. Let us create infinite loops of random things for no reason. But yeah, eventually be able to get counters on things. Like, is this for a counter? Should a counter strategy be, like, considering this? Maybe. Like a niche, like, oh, okay, it's removal, like pseudo removal essentially for you. And eventually it can help you out with counters essentially. So yeah, like proliferate counters decks. Maybe. Again, like the max speed thing is like, you gotta get there. And like, you can't just like depend on this, like being a great counters producer for you unless you actually get there with it. And it's going to take some time to do so. So yeah, it's interesting. I will say it's interesting, but is it going to make the cut? Not sure. Next up, Roadside Blowout. Sorcery for 3 mana in blue. The spell costs 2 less to cast if it targets a permanent mana value 1. Return target creature, vehicle, and opponent controls to its owner's hand. Again, Wizard, why? Why it has to be opponent controls? Why? Stop that. Just stop. You can just blank your own, bounce your own things. Why not? Draw a card. Yeah, this is definitely a more limited card. Definitely not a card that's going to see a lot of play in Commander at all, I wouldn't think. I mean, okay, I guess because it'd be like a 1 mana. Okay, fine. But it's also sorcery speed. So, like, you already limited it in the sorcery way, so, like, why limit it to just targeting your opponent's things? Okay, I disagree, Wizards. Either make it instant speed, and then, sure, it can only be, like, bouncing an opponent's thing. Because it's mana value 1. Like, no. Wizards, bad. Bad Wizards. Bad. Moving on. Stock up. Sorcery for 3 mana in blue. With the top 5 cards of your library, put 2 of them in your hand, the rest of your library in any order. Yeah, again, Divination is just getting lapped right now when it comes to, like, its usefulness. Like, Divination had its day long time ago of, like, all right, 1 mana, we've got cards that can draw a card. There we go, okay. But when it comes to drawing 2 cards, you gotta pay 3. And these days it's like, okay, well, we've got an instant speed version of divination, and then we've got another sorcery speed version of divination, but look at the top 5 and pick your favorite 2. So, yeah, I mean, how much play is this going to see? Probably not all that much. Maybe for like a deck that really cares about, if you've got like a deck that can reduce the cost of instant sorceries, like, yeah, I mean, being able to spend just like 1 or 2 mana to look at the top 5 and get 2 in your hand, great. But like, typically you want your card advantage spells to be instant speed. So, yeah, this was like, I mean, if this was like instant speed, but like look at the top 4, you might consider it, but not this. Moving on. Unswerving Sloth. I'm going this way. 5/5 Sloth Mount for 5 mana. Why would you be riding on a Sloth? Like, you're going to lose the race. It's slow. For 5 mana in white, whenever this creature attacks while saddled, it gains indestructible upturn. Untap all creatures you control. Saddle 4. I mean, I guess if you do have like if you have a deck that works around like tapping all of your creatures essentially with like activated abilities or mana dorks essentially, this kind of works as, oh gosh, there's that one, someone in the comments below, help me out the elf name, but there's like a copper leaf elf, whatever the one is that's like a 1 mana elf. When it attacks, untap all the rest of your creatures, like it's going to get taken out because it's like a 0/1, or a 1/1. But still, this is one that actually can survive in combat, obviously. Again, it's indestructible when you're doing that, essentially, and you untap all creatures, including whatever saddled it, so that's nice. So, yeah, I mean, like, again, if you have like an untapped deck, it's not the worst thing. It's a repeatable way to do that. It is a good amount of investment to do so, though, so I'd say for the most part, very niche card. I mean, Mountain Tribal as well, potentially, or, vehicles. Next up, Wicker Folk Indomitable. Really cool art on this one. A 4/3 Scarecrow. Reaper King fans out there. There you go. 4/4 mana in black. You may cast this card from your graveyard by paying 2 life and sacrificing an artifact or creature that's just paying its other costs. I mean, yeah, for Reaper King decks, that's great, right? Because you're just like, okay, cool. All right, I play you. I destroy one of your lands because that's a Reaper King deck. And then, yeah, it's in my graveyard at some point. Okay, I replay it by sacrificing something and bring it back out. I destroy one of your lands because that's a Reaper King deck. Okay, fine, Reaper King decks, you destroy all the other things first, then you destroy the lands, and you win, right? But yeah, I mean, outside of Scarecrows, I don't see this seeing too much play. And then, finally, Mu Yanling Wind Rider, a 2/4 Human Wizard Pilot for 4 mana in blue. When this creature enters, create a 3/2 colorless vehicle artifact token. I almost always say creature right there. Artifact token, crew 1. Vehicles you control have flying. Whenever one or more creatures you control have flying, deal combination to player, draw a card. Okay, so this one is like, hey, you know what? You can build around a couple different ways. I mean, you could be like a lot of blink effects, so you can keep making a lot, like an army of vehicle tokens, Obviously, there's other ways to utilize artifact tokens that are in play as well, like things that just care about the number of artifacts in play, etc., etc., etc. But yeah, a low crew cost on that, a 3/2. Not evasive, but is evasive because, again, she gives your vehicles flying, which is very nice. So again, literally, if you just want to build around it with vehicles, you could do that as well. That being said, the way that I would probably build around it is more so like, oh yeah, build a bunch of flying creatures into the deck. Like, there's a lot of different ways to make token flyers, essentially, which we'll get to in a second. Yeah, we're going to do a quick take on this one. But yeah, being able to just draw, again, it says 1 or more to a player. So that is, again, in a game of Commander with 3 opponents, that is 3 cards on each one of your turns. That is a lot of card advantage to generate, and it's quite easy to generate that. Again, at the very least, you've got 1 evasive creature. This can crew essentially one of your vehicles, and again, I find it weird that it's a pilot, but you don't get the extra 2, but, that's just me. The tokens get it, but these don't. But yeah, being able to essentially make that evasive creature that has flying, essentially, and then, of course, you're going to make other ones as well. Yeah, you can get a lot of card advantage throughout the game with this, and of course, there's plenty of great effects to make your flyers hit even harder. Unfortunately, not really any ways to give double strike to take advantage of that. Like, obviously, if you're in red, you'd be like, Rage Reflection, cool, my creatures have double strike. They hit twice, and I get, 6 cards instead of just 3. That being said, of course, you are in blue, so yeah, if you really want to go for it, extra turns, you could do that, obviously, because you're like, oh, okay, I'm generating 3 cards of card advantage every single turn. Maybe I've got other ways, like a Fairy Sage's Insight to double that up to, and maybe I'm generating 6. You could probably pretty consistently get an extra turn spell or get like a way to get one back out of your graveyard to recast it. So for the ones that don't exile. Yeah, there's ways, obviously, to go like extra turn flyers if you really want to go about that. But let's jump into some cards that work really well with this one to consider. Again, like I mentioned, yeah, a solid ETB. Again, making a 3-2 vehicle that essentially has flying with the commander in play and has crew 1. So sure, if you want to use and abuse that, blink effects. Wizards, reprint Essence Flux some more, please. Instant for a single blue mana, basically blink a creature. Don't worry about that spirit stuff. But yeah, basically blink a creature. Obviously, some repeatable ones could help as well, Conjurer's Closet. But yeah, just having blink effects in general can be a good way to save your commander from like targeted removal too. So there you go. Next up, low to the ground, evasive flyers. Again, flying men type strategy. You can definitely go into that. A 1/1 fairy wizard with flying for a single blue mana. That's fairies here. ETB scry 2. So again, some nice additional benefit for playing the creature. But of course, obviously, once you get your commander in play, it's also generating you card advantage, not just card selection with that scry 2. Next up, Mockingbird, a 1/1 bird bard with flying for X and a blue. You can just cast it for a blue if you want to. So again, low to the ground when you need it to be. You're going to enter the battlefield with a copy of any creature on the battlefield with mana value less than or equal to the amount of mana spent to cast it, except it's a bird or other types, and it has flying. So again, literally, again, an evasive creature that is basically like a clone, like an adjustable clone if you need it. So that can be quite nice. At the very least, though, if you just want to play it as a 1/1 evasive flyer, there you go. Favorable Winds, a great card for this deck. Enchantment for 2 mana, low to the ground, Anthem, creature control with flying at ++1. Again, just at the very least, it is increasing your vehicles to now 4/3s instead of 3/2s, but of course it's going to increase, obviously in a more beneficial way. Like all your teeny tiny creatures are now 2/2s instead of 1/1s, and you're probably going to have a lot of teeny tiny creatures in the deck, so hit for even harder. Mischievous Mystic, yet another great one. 2/1 flying human wizard. So again, this one has flying itself for 2 mana, which is very nice. When you draw your second card each turn, you make a 1/1 fairy with flying. Cool. So again, you're going to be drawing a lot of cards, obviously, on your turn, on your opponent's turns. If you've got any other ways to draw cards, which you probably do, you're in blue. Great. Do so. Make more fairies. And of course, go wider. Hit your opponents even more. Draw more cards. Murmuring Mystic. Whenever you're casting in sorcery, make a 1/1. You're in a blue deck. You're probably going to have instant sorceries to cast. So there you go. Tolerant Sky Summoner, the OG of these. Make 2/2 Drakes with flying. So yeah, whenever you're doing that instant sorceries, make a bunch of flyers. And that's probably the direction I would go with this one. If you want to go vehicles, great. If you want to go vehicles, fantastic. If you want to go with like a blink strategy, make a bunch of vehicles, cool. That works as well. I'd probably just focus on making a bunch of flyers, essentially, just going super wide with a bunch of flyers because there's so many great ways to do that. I mean, Thought Spy Network's another great one. Again, for upkeep, you control an artifact, create a 1/1 Thought artifact creature shown with flying. Again, our commander already helps us meet that requirement. We literally just play our commander, makes a vehicle. Cool. There you go. All of a sudden, well, cool. We get a 1/1 artifact with flying. We get a Thopter. It's evasive. On top of that, whenever one of our artifact creatures control a combination player, draw a card. So again, that can be basically a way to like double up the card advantage from this commander, essentially. When it comes to actually getting through with, again, artifact creatures specifically, which, I mean, at the very least with this, it's like you got a Thopter, you got your vehicle. Yeah, you're going to get there. You're going to get a lot of cards. I mean, also Coastal Piracy, those kinds of cards too can really help, obviously. Dose of Perfection, a 5/4 flying insect for 5 mana in blue. Whenever you cast an sorcery spell, make a 1/1 blue human wizard creature token. Then if you control 3 or more wizards, transform it. Flips over into a 6/5 flying. It'll draw the insect. Wizards you control +2/+1 and have flying. Whenever you cast an sorcery spell, make that 1/1 human wizard. So yeah, being able to essentially keep making more and more and more flyers, that can be quite beneficial to you. And yeah, I believe, I think the commander actually is a wizard too. I can't remember, but yeah, would have flying then as well. Maybe it's a wizard. I think so. All right, Gravitational Shift. Here we go. Enchantment for 5 mana in blue. Creatures flying at +2/+0. Creatures without flying at -2/-0. A huge anthem for you. Again, this is going to make everything you have hit so much harder. You're going to think your 1/1s hit for 3. Your, 3/2 vehicles are going to hit for 5. And on top of that, your opponent's creatures that don't have flying are going to go, oh, darn. -2/-0. Darn. Next up, though, Sharding Sphinx. This can get out of control. A 4/4 Flying Sphinx for 6 mana in blue. Whenever an artifact creature control deals combat to a player, you may create a 1/1 blue Thopter artifact creature with flying. At the very least, you've got this, plus, your vehicle from your commander. You're going to be making more and more Thopters, and of course, then when those hit, then you make even more. Then when those hit, you make even more. Just like keep going out of control, making a ton. Next up, finally, Shark Typhoon. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, make an XX blue shark creature with flying, or X that spell's mana value. Sharks just naturally have flying, apparently. Again, like that little robot I talked about earlier that's like floating above the ground doesn't have flying, but apparently these sharks, which are always followed around by a typhoon that, lets them go wherever they want to go, I guess, have flying because magic makes sense. or you could cycle away to make a single one. But yeah, basically, again, there are a ton of ways to make a ton of evasive flying creatures. That's great to get through on opponents. There's ways to benefit them. There's ways to benefit when they get through, including your commanders. So yeah, I would probably just go wide with flyers with this. You can go vehicles, you go whatever direction you want, but yeah, that's probably the direction I would go. And with that, this episode is coming to a close. As always, comment below with your thoughts on it. And of course, as always, thanks again and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.